the economic systems between rich countries and poor countries. Ever wondered why Africa, with its vast mineral wealth, still struggles to develop and has a colossal number of its population still living in extreme and abject poverty? In contrast, what is the secret to Japan's economic development and wealth, placing it as one of the richest countries in the world despite it having little mineral wealth of its own? What economic and financial structures create and sustain the gap between the developed world, like Japan, the United States, and Europe, and the developing world, like Africa and Latin America, generating wealth for one and poverty for the other? Ever wondered what is the secret ingredient to China's economic success that has eluded many developing countries for so long that Western countries failed to duplicate? Answers to these questions and more are clearly seen in understanding how economic theory is put into practice. To understand the dynamics that create rich countries, referred to as the developed world, and poor countries, often referred to as the developing world, we start with basic economic principles. Economics 101: Supply and Demand. Theory and Practice. Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, determined that the price of a commodity is determined by its demand through purchases against the quantity of the commodity supplied. The Adam Smith doctrine of supply and demand. In basic terms, Adam Smith propounded that a higher demand of a certain commodity against a limited supply of the same commodity tended to create a higher price. Similarly, an excess of goods supplied that exceeded the demand would cause the equilibrium price to drop. When these forces are based on people's needs and wants and operate unhindered, they are termed as a free market economy. The underlying axioms to the supply and demand doctrine. When Adam Smith talked of his supply and demand doctrine, it carried certain inherent axioms or unspoken rules. He assumed, for example, that country X produced commodity X. It is assumed that commodity X is bought by currency X belonging to country X. The currency X thus represents the sum total of all goods and services produced in country X at that point in time. If country Y wanted commodity X, country Y cannot use its own currency Y to purchase commodity X, except by purchasing currency X needed to purchase commodity X. Therefore, country Y supplies currency Y to currency X in order to purchase currency X, which in turn, citizens of country X wishing to purchase commodity Y in country Y supply country Y with currency X to obtain currency Y. The varying amounts of currency supplied by both countries against the price of commodities wanted by both parties establishes an exchange rate or equilibrium price to purchase each other's currencies. Theory and practice. In practice and reality, Adam Smith's supply and demand doctrine dictates a US dollar cannot purchase any commodity directly from the European Union unless it is first changed into a euro. Similarly, a euro cannot directly purchase any commodity in the United States of America unless it is first changed into a US dollar. Free market economies and economic liberalization. It is the Adam Smith's doctrine of supply and demand that has given rise to a free market system, which is said to be the cornerstone of democratic systems. Thus, it is not surprising that the developed world, economically speaking, are those that seem to appear to follow the Adam Smith doctrine and appear to have the wealthiest economic systems. The command economy and economic control. The major difference between the developed world and the developing world is the lack of adhering to the free market doctrine, as their exports are sold directly into US dollars as if they are being made in the US economy. This is clearly seen in the operations of the London Metal Exchange (LME), the world's leading trading organization in base metals, and its clearing currency regulations. It handles close to 80% of the world's base metals. London Metal Exchange clearing regulations. Although the London Metal Exchange claims to be a free market with its ring of buyers and sellers negotiating prices to buy commodities, these commodities sold are not bought by the currencies in which the commodities originate from. This violates the hidden axioms of Adam Smith's supply and demand doctrine. In fact, the LME regulations ban the use of all currencies in clearing payments except for the US dollar, the sterling pound, the euro, the Japanese yen, and until July 2015, the Chinese renminbi was added to the list to be used as collateral. The London Metal Exchange regulations are shown below. Poverty and wealth. The US dollar, the Japanese yen, the sterling pound, the euro, and since July 2015, the Chinese renminbi own all the mineral resources in the world, financially speaking, as they are the only permitted currencies allowed to buy them. This anti-free market policy is more communist in nature and echoes sentiments of a command economy, as these currencies obtain resources from other countries outside the dictates of a free market system to create their developed status while underdeveloping other nations. Enter the Dragon, the invisible hand creating the wealth of the developed world while keeping the developing world in poverty is a result of not strictly following Adam Smith's supply and demand doctrine and understanding the underlying axioms. The question here is then, how did China, the dragon, lift itself out of poverty despite so many nations attempting to do the same for so long? The secret to understanding China's economic success. The People's Republic of China's economic and financial success is seen in its strict adherence to the fundamentals of Adam Smith's doctrine of supply and demand through its currency regulations. Although Chinese firms quote exports in US dollars, these are surrendered to the central bank and are exchanged for Chinese renminbi, in effect selling their commodities in their own currency as the final payment settlement. The market system behind China's economy. Understanding China's economic success can clearly be understood in what former London Financial Times editor Mr. Geoffrey Crowther wrote in his book An Outline of Money. Wrote, "If a purchaser is someone who wants D-Marks in order to pay for German export, the fact that he can get his D-Marks cheap is equivalent to a reduction in the price of export. It will stimulate sales in exactly the same way as an ordinary depreciation of the exchange rate." It is D-Marks buying German exports, just like country X buying commodity X with its own currency X, and Chinese goods having their final payment being settled in Chinese renminbi. All these actions follow the underlying axioms of Adam Smith's supply and demand doctrine. Different policy approaches. The difference between China and the rest of the developing world in creating wealth was that it preferred to devalue the price of her exports to stimulate inflows of US dollars, rather than the International Monetary Fund policy enshrined in Western economic policy to devalue or depreciate a currency to stimulate US dollar inflows. In effect, Chinese produced goods had their price deliberately lowered to make them attractive to stimulate US dollar inflows that equaled a currency depreciation. Against this, China could control its money market more effectively and hence its exchange rate. The price factor. The dynamics of Adam Smith's supply and demand doctrine is observed in the varying size of the supply and its demand over time, which affects the equilibrium price. In other words, the rate of buying and selling is heavily influenced by price, which in turn affects the available monetary resources against the existing unavailability of goods and services. A large supply of currency X to buy a limited supply of currency Y would make currency Y more expensive in terms of currency X. In this case, currency Y is the US dollar in the graph below, while currency X, the sterling pound, whose value increases from Q1 to Q2. Here the pound drops in value from £1 per 1.5 US dollars to £1 per 1.7 US dollars. The price factor between markets. If country X and country Y produce the same product H at the same price with all factors of production being the same, there will be no need for either countries to import the product H. However, if country X supplied more currency X to country Y to get currency Y to purchase other goods, then the price of product H in country X, when converted to currency Y, would appear cheaper, as the exchange rate would make currency Y stronger than currency X. Hence, currency Y being able to buy more units of currency X cheaply. This in turn makes product H in country Y more expensive as a result. Thus, country Y imports from country X product H. The China effect and economic success. How China has succeeded in global trade is to lower the price of product H so as to enhance more inflows of currency X into its money market Y, as product H in country Y is cheaper. In this case, country Y is China and country X being the United States of America. The flooding of currency X at a faster rate in money market Y causes currency Y to appreciate, but this reduces the attractiveness of product H under China. China thus removes excess currency X from its money market, causing the Chinese currency to lose value, which in turn appears as increasing international currency Y reserves for China. China also removes Chinese renminbi liquidity to pay Chinese firms in their own currency in line with the free market doctrine, in such a way to keep the exchange rate stable. The non-China effect and economic failure. As currency X directly purchases product W in country Y, it bypasses country Y's currency Y, which instead of being directly weighted to currency X through its wanted product W through currency Y purchases, currency Y is instead weighted against a fraction of the production of currency X made available against the majority of currency X from purchases of product W flowing into country Y's money market, hence creating a higher price to purchase currency X. The nature of product W's price. As observed, the price of product W is not determined by currency Y but by currency X, as it purchases directly product W. Production cost of product W may well be based on currency Y, but currency Y does not participate in the purchase of its own product W as demanded by Adam Smith in his underlying axioms. Therefore, the nature of product W's price is clearly seen in reality on the London Metal Exchange (LME). Prices on the London Metal Exchange are based on the supply of selected currencies while totally ignoring the origin of the currencies in which the products originate to purchase their own product. However, in the past, the LME price was not the only price to sell commodities, as a producer price existed and operated along the lines of the Chinese system of price reduction. Flaws in the London Metal Exchange price system. The London money markets handle over $1.5 trillion plus a day, while over $10 billion plus a day passes through the London Metal Exchange broking firm. The LME may sell 50,000 tons of copper in a day, obtained from many nations against, for example, Zambia, contributing 2,000 tons a day. Hence, the LME price is based on 50,000 tons of copper from various nations with different production rates and different market liquidities of their own national currencies in their money market. Zambia may well have only contributed 2,000 tons a day to the LME, but demand the LME price of, say, $10,000 per ton. The $10,000 per ton is based on 50,000 tons against a US dollar liquidity that outstrips the Zambian kwacha, Zambia's national currency liquidity, in US dollar terms per day in her money market. Zambia may well have a small kwacha liquidity, but the vast US dollar liquidity against LME's aggregate copper sales gives prices way outside the value parameters of the Zambian economy. If Zambian copper producers tried to flood the LME with copper, it would cause the price to drop. Or if copper prices rise, as was the case in 2006, the earned revenue in US dollars would be hit by a loss of value as prices would have risen as observed in US dollar LME quoted prices. Insulating an economy from the Damascus sword exogenous shock means demanding payment in your own currency. However, in China's case, increased production and a drop in prices increased US dollar revenue inflows as China had the final payment settlement for her firms in Chinese renminbi, while keeping the size of her money market small, coupled with keeping the exchange rate stable by removing excess US dollar liquidity, which in turn built its international reserves. The producer price, the LME, and understanding China. As noted, as late as April 1966, Ron Selection Trust (RST) and Anglo-American Corporation (AAC) sold Zambian copper at £336 per tonne under a producer price system, while the London Metal Exchange price was at £753 per tonne. Then, the 1966 economic growth rate was robust, well above 7%, much like China today, and a strong kwacha parity existed, $2.80 per kwacha. The LME price system came into effect on April the 25th, 1960. Since then, when LME copper prices drop, Zambia's economic growth rate is negatively affected, including the exchange rate parity. When comparing the two pricing mechanisms, a large difference is one system creates wealth by adhering to the principles of a free market system, and the other system creates poverty as it takes on a posture of a command economy as it disregards free market fundamentals. Producer price system. In the producer price system, its money market liquidity is small. As Zambian copper then was sold in Rhodesian pounds, whose total liquidity was small, it is easily influenced by US dollar inflows as compared to the large existing liquidity of the London money market. This was in line with the Adam Smith doctrine of supply and demand. As observed, under the producer price system, US dollar inflows into the Zambian economy in 1966 faced a total of Zambian kwacha currency in circulation of 32.7 million kwacha, and Zambia's foreign exchange inflows reached $520 million minus imports. Therefore, $520 million would have to purchase 32.7 million kwacha to buy Rhodesian pounds needed to buy discounted copper. Thus, the increasing availability of US dollars within the Zambian money market looking for Rhodesian pounds exceeded the available Rhodesian pounds liquidity, and hence Zambia could achieve an exchange rate of about $2.80 per kwacha. If the kwacha grew too strong, the excess US dollars were removed, creating growing reserves as observed in China today and Zambia then. Market size and the exchange rate. The producer price system diverted cash flows from the London money market, which are valued at over $1.5 trillion plus a day, into Zambia's money market, handling about $10 million a day, for example. The maths is simple. If Zambia produced $30 million worth of copper per day and discounted it in a producer price system by 50%, for example, the Zambian money market would experience a sudden influx of copper receipts at around $15 million against a $10 million money market kwacha. It would be an oversupply of US dollars causing the kwacha to appreciate, or the excess US dollars would be removed and placed into reserves. This is the effect that Chinese cheap products have in its money markets today. The demand for the kwacha to buy copper at the producer price would also drain the money market of kwacha liquidity until an equilibrium price level is reached between the available kwacha in the economy needed to settle local costs of Zambians, like buying food, wages, etc., and to allow the same kwacha to be bought up by US dollar inflows that want to buy cheaper Zambian copper than the LME aggregate copper sales. This price equilibrium was reflected in the exchange rate and interest rates. On the LME price system, there is no US dollar interaction to purchase the kwacha. Globalization. The success of China to globalize her economy is that China undercut the price of global value to stimulate physically US dollar inflows into her economy. This global value system goes against the free market doctrine as it is command-based and insensitive to market fundamentals within each country's money market. This anti-market stance is observed in the International Monetary Fund (IMF) fixed cross rates system. It is these fixed cross rates that are more like price controls and duplicate the same behavior of the LME price structure as opposed to a producer price or market-driven price. The IMF fixed cross rates and price control. The IMF fixed cross rates goes against the free market system. The IMF fixed cross rates are based on the exchange rate of the US dollar against the sterling pound. For example, on the 30th of March 2018, the sterling pound value to the US dollar was £1 equal to 1.404 US dollars. The euro value against the sterling pound was £1 was equal to 1.140 euros, while against the US dollar it stood at 1 US dollar was equal to 0.81169 euros. By dividing 1.140 euros by 0.81169 euros, it gave a cross rate of 1.404. The North Korean won reflects a similar configuration: 1,263 won per sterling pound against 900.691 per US dollar gives a cross rate of 1.404. The Japanese yen reflects a similar posture: 149.067 yen per sterling pound against 106.185 yen per US dollar gives a cross rate of 1.401. The Canadian dollar was 1.288 Canadian dollar per US dollar against 1.809 Canadian dollars per sterling pound, giving a cross rate of 1.404. The South African rand was 11.82 rands per US dollar against 16.6 sterling pounds, gave a cross rate of 1.404. This price control implies all currencies across the world have in their money market the same exact liquidities of the US dollar and sterling pound to reflect the cross rates. The reality on the ground is that national money markets have different values and exchange rates. Exchange arbitrage should be allowed to drive a free-floating cross-rate system in line with the free market system. Free-floating cross rates and globalization. The picture that emerges in a free-floating cross-rate system, for example, may see country Z having a trade surplus with country J, as it uses yen to convert into country Z's currency, the kwacha, to buy copper. This creates an exchange rate of 1,000 yen per 1 kwacha, as country J uses her yen to purchase kwachas, country Z's national currency. Country Z buys very little from country J in relation to what country Z exports to country J. Through this, country J uses the purchased country Z's kwacha to buy copper, against which country Z accumulates yen in its market. Although the exchange rate in country Z for the US dollar, based on country Z's market liquidity, may be 8 kwacha per US dollar, in country J it may well be 200 yen per US dollar, as country J trades more with the United States than country Z. If a citizen in country Z wanted to import an iPhone from the United States, pegged at $500, it would be cheaper to buy the iPhone via country J. But this would in turn affect market liquidities in both country Z and country J money markets and exchange rates as currency arbitrage operations occur. The $500 iPhone in country Z in kwacha terms, based on its 8 kwacha per US dollar rate, would cost 4,000 kwacha. But through country J, the cost of the iPhone would be 100,000 yen at 200 yen per US dollar, being through country Z's kwacha stroke yen exchange rate at 1,000 yen per kwacha. It would be worth 100 kwacha, which is equal in US dollar based on country Z's US dollar stroke kwacha exchange rate at $12.50. At $12.50 per iPhone, the United States would be on an equal footing to deal with another country called China with its cheap exports, unless China's cross rates are lower in the country's China/United States/country Z's exchange rate configurations. It would then be a question of quality and finding the best value in currency arbitrage operations. The United States would still get its $500 disregardless of the value step up or step down, and the problem of external disequilibrium is addressed provided each country settled its exports in its national currencies. Western economic policy. Western economic policy to stimulate economic growth and hence US dollar inflows has been based on national currency devaluation and a tight monetary policy, while encouraging foreign investment. Depreciation has been managed through tighter fiscal control, increased taxation and interest rates, supplemented by borrowing funds to meet budget shortfalls. The biggest flaw in Western economic philosophy is that it believes that taxation and a tight monetary policy are hallmarks of bringing into play the forces of supply and demand to allocate insufficient resources. The reality is that taxation above certain limits is more Keynesian in nature than Smithsonian. John Maynard Keynes believed that countries could print money and use it to buy their way out of a crisis. But this, in the long run, created inflation and unemployment. Adam Smith and the market economy wanted tight fiscal control, and the market would allocate resources based on needs more effectively. Thus, to arrive at that market price, excess money is removed from the economy through increased taxation, interest rates, and currency depreciation while keeping government operational. Taxation and poverty. When looking at any national budget, excessive taxation is no different to Keynesian economics of printing of money, except it is government recycling the budget continuously in one calendar year. For example, the South African budget of 2018 was about 1,414 billion rand. That represented 29.8% of the gross domestic product. This implies that the GDP total is about 4,744.46 billion, which covers 365 days. To collect 1,414 billion rand from 4,744.96 billion rand, it gives a monthly extraction rate of 2.483% per month to yield 117.80 billion rands per month, annualized to give the 2018 budget of 1,414.1 billion rands. At a tax rate of 8.3% per month, the entire value of the GDP would be collected. However, as taxes are above 8.3%, the government is collecting the budget, spending it, then recollecting it, and spending it, and recollecting it in a cyclical pattern many times in a single calendar year. In effect, it is like Keynesian economics and the printing of money, except instead of physically printing money, the printing is done by recycling it. Taxes thus become compounded. Government tax at 30% in the first cycle would extract the value, leaving 70% of the GDP. Then the next cycle, extract another 30%, leaving 40% of the GDP. The next 30% extraction in real terms is facing 40% of the economy left, and in real value terms, the tax is 75% tax. That is why wages buy next to nothing, as government has already spent the value of workers' wages. If each cycle is about 10 days, then in 50 days, government would have spent all the value of the economy. A deficit in value occurs, and a fiscal crisis occurs. Excessive taxation above 8.3% manufactures poverty.